You may not have noticed, but this week is a completely different world than the one we were living in just last week in crypto and Cardano. While we once got to enjoy this beautiful meandering stream all by ourselves in solitude, just enjoying the serene beauty of it all, those days are over. We're now going to be mainstreamed, and it's time that we start preparing and planning for all of retail to join us. If you've been bracing yourself for years in preparation for the inevitable mainstreaming of Cardano, or if you're finding value in these videos, please consider delegating to the Army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. I know what some of you are thinking right now. Right now, some of you are thinking, give me that. I want all the tourists to fly into our beautiful, serene little valley that we've had all to ourselves. I want them to crowd the locals out of our beautiful, meandering river. I want this. I don't care if it ruins the beauty of the river. I don't care about the ethos of crypto. I don't care about principles. What I want is for someone to pump my bags. Just pump my bags. I know some of you are thinking that right now. You want number to go up, and number is flat, even though we had the great anticipated event, of which there have been many, many, many in crypto. There's always some upcoming greatly anticipated event. Crypto has always been super narrative driven, and Cardano has been not an exception to this at all. Cardano has also been greatly driven by the next big narrative. It was always Rogan after Gogan. this was a, this was a hope, an anticipation, an expectation of some kind of great mainstreaming at some point in the future, after some technological milestone had been met. Then the great mainstreaming would come, and then it was okay. We technically have the possibility of having smart contracts, but we actually need the smart contracts, and we need developers to be able to write them. And we need some kind of, some form of DApp connectors to connect. You remember, we documented the whole thing on this channel. We all went through that. All of us who were around in Cardano. We remember this whole saga. It was one narrative after another. It's not just Cardano, though. That's been the story in crypto the whole time. It's always been crypto is going to take over the world one day. The next thing just has to happen, and maybe the next thing after that, and the next thing after that, but eventually we're going to take over the whole world. That's always been the story in crypto, and it's never quite happened in any dramatic way that was easy to detect. I would contend it actually has been happening this whole time. It hasn't been dramatic. It's we've had these dramatic parabolic waves where every 4 years, we have the Bitcoin block reward halving event, and then all of a sudden everything goes crazy, price goes crazy, and then all the narratives sort of disappear, and the only narrative is number goes up, and then everybody's suddenly in crypto, talking about crypto, interested in crypto. But that's not the kind of mainstream adoption I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual mainstreaming beyond just price speculation. That piece we've always been waiting for. But last week was different. I know it feels the same. Today feels the same as a week ago Monday, before the actual ETF approvals happened. It feels the same. And price isn't really that different. We didn't have any kind of like crazy parabolic rocket. Nobody got sent to the moon. Maybe I'm sure there's some very small cap meme coin you're all going to tell me you made billions of dollars on. Good for you. Enjoy your moon Lambos. For the rest of us, though, things kind of feel the same. I would contend that's not really true. It feels the same because when you open the gates, sometimes they're not floodgates, right? Like we imagine this dramatic event, all of a sudden the mainstream just pours into crypto and into Cardano as if it's water, as if a dam has been exploded. And all of a sudden, this gigantic mass of water rushes into the valley below. That's not really the way this is going to work. Obviously, I think we can say that now. It's been, it's the next week already. We've had a couple of days of trading these Bitcoin ETFs, and it hasn't been like, this crazy parabolic, super dramatic event, world changing, nothing like that, because it wasn't the opening of the floodgates. This was more like the opening of a door, the building of a bridge, the opening of a road. This was more like the infrastructure that would allow people to discover crypto. I think most people have already conceptually discovered crypto. They have heard the word crypto. Maybe someone's tried to explain it to them, they don't understand. But it hasn't really ever been a part of the greater traditional financial system. We haven't been a part of TradFi. Sure, there've been little products here and there. We already had Grayscale and a few other things, and there were even ETFs outside of North America, that kind of thing in smaller markets. But this was the big opening of the door for the mainstream. And it's been pointed out by a lot of people over the last week. It hasn't been this gigantic burst of activity. And I think that's because of the way TradFi really works, right? You've got a million, and other people have put this much more eloquently than I'm about to, particularly Raoul Pal, who's not a favorite in Cardano and sometimes not even a favorite in crypto generally. He may not be everybody's favorite guy, but I think he put this quite eloquently. He pointed out that all of the RIAs, all the registered investment advisors across North America, they might have found out about the Bitcoin ETFs slowly, casually. They might have opened up their computer on Saturday morning, their laptop, and saw a headline, Bitcoin ETF, and said to themselves, oh, Bitcoin. I know about Bitcoin. It's digital. Maybe that's all they even know about Bitcoin. Maybe they don't know anything about the cryptography. They don't know anything about the 21 million hard cap. They definitely don't know anything about any other asset in crypto whatsoever. They just know there's this thing called Bitcoin. It's digital. Maybe that's all they know about it. Maybe they know it's easy to lose, hard to store, those kinds of things. But when they see that word next to it, ETF, all of a sudden they're going to realize, oh, I can sell this now. I can sell this to people. All my clients, all those dentists I go golfing with, nothing against dentists, but all those dentists I go golfing with, they're going to start asking me about this because I've heard them mention Bitcoin before when we're golfing. I have no idea what it is, but I've heard them mention it. They're going to start asking me about it. And when they do, I can sell it to them. I think that's how this kind of organic opening of the gates is going to happen. It's not an explosion of a dam, it's an opening of a door, and people are going to start walking through it. A few people already have. We saw the inflows last week into all of the ETFs. There was activity. It wasn't insane. It wasn't some insane amount of activity. It wasn't the amount of activity that would make the spot Bitcoin price go crazy, because that didn't happen. But it was the beginning. It was the opening of that door. And I think a lot of dentists are going to walk through that door. They're going to ask their investment advisors on the golf course. They're going to ask them about the Bitcoin ETF. Can I invest in that now? People are going to open up their brokerage accounts and they're going to look. Can I buy Bitcoin now? What if I just search the word Bitcoin? This is going to happen slowly for now. It's going to happen slowly for now. The important thing is that the door is open and it's going to affect the entire crypto space. It's going to affect the entire crypto space, just like everything that's ever happened in Bitcoin, namely that Bitcoin block reward halvening event every 4 years. That has always been the biggest mover in the crypto cycle. That has always been the big divide. The thing that kicked off the bull cycle was always that event. It was always that Bitcoin related event. So this is going to affect everything in crypto, including Cardano, but it's going to be slow for now until we get past that Bitcoin block reward halvening event. If you've been around for a couple cycles, you know, as soon as that happens, all of a sudden we get The thing that everybody has always talked about in crypto, the thing that people love to chart and make predictions based on and discuss ad nauseum, that is the supply shock that happens when half as much Bitcoin is being created with every single block. It's as it's as dramatic as it could possibly get in terms of the production of any asset. All of a sudden, there's half as much. It's on the same schedule. There isn't really a schedule because we don't know how long it's going to take to mine each block. But with each block that's mined, there's going to be half as much. It's as dramatic as it could get. It's like half of the mines of any particular mineral suddenly going offline forever. This doesn't happen. We don't have half the gold mines suddenly, simultaneously, exactly the same second, exactly 50% of the gold mines are sealed forever. This isn't the way it works. But in crypto, it does work this way. So while this doesn't seem like the floodgates have been, hurled open on us right now, we are going to go into another one of these cycles like we've had after every Bitcoin block reward halvening event. And all of a sudden, all those registered investment advisors are going to have their clients out on the golf course. And last time, those guys probably asked the exact same questions. Can I buy Bitcoin? And the answer has always been no. You can't buy Bitcoin through that registered investment advisor as any kind of a normal TradFi asset. But this time, when they ask him that or her that same question, the answer is going to be yes. We might be in a fundamentally different era of crypto than we've ever been in before. We might have to start describing the eras of crypto as pre-ETF and post-ETF. People won't even remember what year it happened. In a couple of years, people won't even be able to tell you if it happened in 2024, 2023, 2022. Nobody will remember. But we might have to describe it as post ETF or pre ETF. That's how different it is. And whether you want this scene right here with a million tourists ruining your favorite river, clumsily pretending to fly fish, whether you want this or not, I think we've entered an era where this is possible for the first time ever in crypto. And it's going to affect Cardano just like every other part of crypto. If you're wondering how far this mainstreaming extends, is this just a thing that a small number of people who like to invest in traditional financial assets care about? Or is this an actual full on cultural mainstreaming? You should probably look at this post. It says the Biden administration's anti crypto policies are just bad politics. 20% of voters, 52 million, own crypto, more than own an electric vehicle, hold a union card, or went to an NFL game. 61% of them voted for Biden in 2020, 60% under 35, 40% people of color, 75% make less than 100K. Overrepresented in states like Pennsylvania, Nevada, Georgia, and Arizona. Elizabeth Warren is going to cost them the election. When you see those kinds of numbers and you understand how important those can be in a White House election year, it makes you wonder if something like this really isn't maybe that far off from the truth. If you're just listening, this is a picture of Gensler and the dragon, and Gensler saying, I can't keep rejecting the Bitcoin ETFs, dragon. I already got sued and lost. Plus, Larry said I'll never work in this industry again if I don't approve them. And it really did have that feeling. It had that kind of feeling like the current administration was being forced into approving the Bitcoin ETFs. Why were they forced into this? What was the leverage? Maybe it was like I've been saying on this channel for a long time. They were going to be really tough on crypto last year, but that was going to come at too high a political price in 2024, the actual election year. It was going to be far too difficult for them to come down as hard on crypto in 2024 as they did in 2023 because the other candidates would beat them over the heads with it. And they knew that would resonate with Very key demographics, the ones outlined in that last post, the kinds of demographics that the current administration really needs if their party is to win this election. They need young people. They need all those kinds of groups. And like the post said, there are more people holding crypto than there are people with electric cars, which makes perfect sense because it's a lot easier to acquire $5 worth of crypto than it is to acquire a Tesla. But still, that stat might be startling to some people. There are more people with crypto than there are people with electric cars. And the administration definitely seems very focused on that electric car demographic and very focused on alienating, seemingly, the demographic of people holding crypto. So it's possible this post is obviously implying that BlackRock and Larry Fink and the titans of Wall Street kind of forced them into accepting the ETFs, but maybe it was more so a political reality. They knew they would alienate too many voters they needed if they didn't approve these ETFs. I'm sure the truth is a combination of both. Surely there was pressure from Wall Street, and surely they needed to appease all the voters who are obviously very pro crypto. Of course, we finally did get the SEC approval of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. And Gensler, of course, had this long article prepared where he could not resist impugning the rest of the crypto space while he was approving the Bitcoin ETF. Importantly, today's commission action is cabined to ETPs holding one non security commodity, Bitcoin. It should in no way signal the Commission's willingness to approve listing standards for crypto asset securities, nor does the approval signal anything about the Commission's views as to the status of other crypto assets under the federal securities laws or about the current state of non-compliance of certain crypto asset market participants. So he couldn't just say, hey, here's your Bitcoin ETF. This has no bearing on anything else. He has to say, oh, by the way, this is a commodity. Everything else might be a security. In fact, he's saying there are securities. He's saying has nothing to do with his willingness to approve listing standards for crypto asset securities, almost implying that everything else might be a crypto asset security. And once again, bringing up what he sees as the status of non compliance of market participants. So, this is kind of what we expected from Gensler. Of course, we also got a very nice article from Hester Peirce, who is a long, long time ally and advocate for crypto within the SEC at this point, and she's been fighting Gensler tooth and nail on every single crypto issue. So it's great to see her having this moment of victory. And I think for everybody else, Kraken got it right here. It pretty much felt just like this. This is the way it felt. Even though prices didn't really move, a lot of us were expecting a, buy the rumor, sell the news kind of moment. That didn't really happen either. It was just kind of a non-event as far as price went. But conceptually, as far as the mainstream adoption of crypto, this is really how this event felt. This was something that we all knew needed to happen. It was an inevitable step toward the mainstream at least getting TradFi into crypto. This was how that moment felt. Then we got to see the shocking SEC vote tally, where it was a 3-2 vote, and Gensler voted in favor. But of course, you immediately had people, describing what's probably the case. The marching orders were the Bitcoin, whether you think they came from Wall Street or the White House or just public sentiment, the marching orders were obviously the Bitcoin ETF must be approved. So if you're the good soldier, Gary Gensler, of course, you are going to have to vote for approval if you already knew that 2 commissioners were going to vote against, or if you just wanted to create the impression of a 3-2 vote, whatever it is. I think it's fair to say that any kind of character at this level, like a Gary Gensler, every single thing they do is a highly calculated political move. Appearances are everything, perception is reality. And of course, if it had to be approved, why should he be seen voting against it when he can just vote in favor of it? I think the the vote was preordained. I think Gensler had his marching orders. These ETFs had to be approved, And so here they are approved, 3-2 vote. In the days following the approvals, part of the experience was watching the orthodox resist the unraveling of the orthodoxy. And here's an example of that. Immediately the next day, when trading began with the Bitcoin ETFs, we started seeing reports that certain broker dealers were refusing to let their clients buy these Bitcoin ETF products. And then in the days after that, there were even reports that one broker dealer had even removed Bitcoin futures products from their offering. They're so upset and resistant to this advent of Bitcoin ETFs, I guess. But I mean, what do you expect? I think the whole time the narrative has been that crypto would be the undoing of the global TradFi system. So, of course, those who have benefited most from the TradFi system, some of them are going to jump on board with us because they know there's money to be made, and others are going to be recalcitrant and staunchly resist any movement toward blockchain based products. And we have seen that a little bit with a couple of traditional firms in the financial space. Here we have even something regarding the true final boss in the game of hypocrisy, JP Morgan. For years, we've listened to Jamie Dimon, head of JP Morgan, tell us how terrible crypto is, say all kinds of bad things about crypto, and then we find out that JP Morgan is an authorized participant in BlackRock's ETF offering. So I actually think this little warning about crypto ETFs, about the Bitcoin ETF, is not that bad. They probably need this even more so because they're an authorized participant in the offering. They're just warning their customers that crypto may be highly volatile. I think even us in the crypto space would agree with that. Crypto is highly volatile and there are unique risks. Crypto is likes to go parabolic in both directions. Crypto, we have very high highs and very, very low lows during the bear market. And I think people should be warned about that. So I actually don't think it's bad that JP Morgan is warning their clients. However, they are still the final boss in the game of hypocrisy when Jamie Dimon has been talking so badly about crypto all these years. And then we see they're actually an authorized participant in one of the Bitcoin ETFs. Of course, one of the most satisfying moments of this entire saga was this, the dragon's reaction to all this. You remember in the last video, we covered how at the 11th hour, she tried to send a letter saying that this was all wrong and the ATF should not be approved. And of course, they were approved. Turns out her anti crypto army was not as powerful as she thought. And here was her response. The SEC is wrong on the law and wrong on the policy with respect to the Bitcoin ETF decision. If the SEC is going to let crypto burrow even deeper into our financial system, then it's more urgent than ever that crypto follow basic anti money laundering rules. And of course, she got a community note. The first community note was actually the harshest one. And then I think, her supporters kind of went to work and we ended up with like a much softer community note. The first one said that it sort of commented on her wrong on the law uh, language and pointed out that a case in the courts had actually decided that the SEC was not wrong on the law. So the dragon is actually wrong on the law here. That was sort of the gist of the first community note. Then we got this much softer version that I kind of thought was probably the result of some of her supporters or staff, uh, I don't know exactly how it works, but probably proposing a new community node and getting enough votes or something for it. I don't even know how this works. But anyways, we ended up with this much softer one. Now we get this community note. This is the third one that I've seen. There may have been more than that, more iterations even, but this is the third one that I've seen. There are already robust laws to prevent crypto money laundering. U.S. agencies such as FinCEN, SEC, CFTC enforce anti-money laundering compliance, sanctions adherence, and the transaction monitoring. States like New York BitLicense also contribute to AML efforts. So this doesn't directly contradict her SEC is wrong on the law. So I'd have preferred if the first community note would have stuck around. But it is super funny just generally seeing her getting community noted when she's claiming the SEC is wrong on securities law. That part was fun, but this next part was fun and surprising. So the head of BlackRock, Larry Fink, he's sometimes painted as the Darth Vader of Wall Street. Everyone knows BlackRock is famous, or if you will, notorious for owning everything. It's the company that owns every company, basically. So he's kind of painted as the Darth Vader, the evil character who owns everything, the epitome of Wall Street greed in some people's eyes. Yeah, I think crypto people might change their opinion of him after they see this. And I think a lot of us did see this. So he proceeded to go on CNBC and Bloomberg and maybe a bunch of other financial news outlets, but I saw these two. And he said some things that surprised me. He said, step one was the ETFs, step two is tokenize everything. So he talked about how when BlackRock first leaned heavily into ETFs, he says they were mocked a little bit on Wall Street, and then that turned out to be the right bet. And it sounds like he sees his tokenize everything strategy as similar. He even said, I see value in having an Ethereum ETF. Like I said, these are just stepping stones toward tokenization. His ultimate goal is tokenizing everything. When he says everything, I think he really means mainly financial assets, but he got a little deeper into it. He said, think about this. If we have tokenized securities and you have a tokenized identity, so he's talking about at least digital identity. Maybe it's not even self sovereign identity. Maybe it's not decentralized identity, but he's at least talking about some kind of tokenized, digitized identity. That's a starting point. From the head of BlackRock, I'll take it. He was talking to the anchor, Andrew. He says, you, Andrew, the moment you buy or sell an asset, it's known, it's on a general ledger. You want to talk about issues around money laundering, it eliminates all corruption. He understands something really important. The beauty of the blockchain is the transparent, well, one of the beauties is the transparency of the blockchain. It's not a good route to go if you're trying to launder money. Why would you launder money on the blockchain when you could do it with suitcases full of cash, full of dollars? And we've seen in the past how there were these scandals with, large North American banks, making the deposit drawers larger so that cartels could fit briefcases of money because they knew that they were laundering money, those kinds of things. So we know that cash is a much better and much more widely used option for money laundering than the blockchain. But he actually understands why. It's because of the transparency of a blockchain ledger. It's actually a terrible choice for money laundering. He says every stock, every asset will have its own basically QSIP. Each investor will have their own identification. It'll all be on one general ledger. We'll rid ourselves of all illicit activity and have instantaneous settlement. So he's putting this in words that the TradFi world will understand. But basically, he's saying what all of us in crypto already know, that you could take all of the TradFi products, all the traditional finance products, you could just give them an identifier, an asset identifier. And you could give every investor their own digital, tokenized, maybe one day even decentralized identity. And then everything can happen on the ledger. You know exactly who owns what. Of course, this isn't the world that we in crypto would prefer. We don't want everybody to be, identified, because this is also the road to dystopian surveillance finance that we don't like. But he is right about this part. You can have on chain identity for everyone, you can have on chain identification of all the assets. And then with a real blockchain ledger, whether it's centralized or decentralized, you could very easily have a level of transparency that would rid that system of all illicit activity and provide instantaneous settlement. This is something that has been talked about as a use case for crypto for a long, long time. In fact, whole blockchains were invented for this purpose, to create instantaneous settlement, which is something we haven't really had in the securities world. Guys, I think that is about as good as it's going to get for crypto when it comes to Wall Street. For Larry Fink, the head of BlackRock, to come out and say, "Hey, you know all that ETF stuff we've been doing over here for years? That was really all just in preparation for us to tokenize everything. Would you guys in crypto be okay if we just tokenize everything?" So this has obviously been something we've talked about for a long, long time in crypto. The possibility that eventually everything would inevitably be tokenized. Now, the Darth Vader of Wall Street is on our side. He too wants to tokenize everything. That's probably as good as it can get on the Wall Street side. But there are more dimensions to crypto than just the TradFi world and crypto's interaction with the TradFi world. We've also got the social aspect. And when I imagine what would be the best possible thing, let's go back a couple years even. Let's go back a couple years. If I were to imagine to myself a couple years ago, what would be the best possible thing that could happen to crypto on the social front? It would probably go something like this. So, some completely insane billionaire, a famous one, a powerful one, a really important billionaire buys the social platform that is probably the most important these days to crypto, and then he decides to turn it into a giant crypto site. It just becomes a giant crypto thing. It becomes a website that does basically everything. It becomes an everything site. And economically, financially, it's all being run on crypto rails. Well, exactly that might be happening right now. We've heard rumblings from Elon for a long time that he was going to turn Twitter into the everything site. He was changing the name even. It was going to be called X instead of Twitter because it was going to be so much more than tweets. It was going to be the everything website, and Twitter couldn't possibly be broad enough to encapsulate everything that was going to happen. And of course, the dream here on our crypto side, the speculation is, hey, wouldn't it be cool if he just took all the Twitter addresses and he turned those all into crypto wallets, and then we could just use Twitter as a gigantic network to send crypto back and forth. And there's a lot of details there, a lot of things need to be worked out. Is it completely centralized? How bad is the robbery forest aspect of it? What blockchains is this going to involve? Maybe none of the blockchains, maybe it's all completely centralized. There's no decentralization whatsoever. Maybe just the assets are going back and forth like a giant centralized exchange kind of thing. Would Cardano even be included? These are all important details, and we don't know the answers yet. But we do know one thing. It looks like this might actually be happening. Whether it's the really good version of that or the really bad version of that, it looks like it might actually be happening because X has applied for and received a money transmitter license in Utah. So, why is this important? So you're probably aware if you follow some of the regulatory affairs in the crypto world, you're probably aware there's not really a way for a crypto exchange, a centralized exchange, a Coinbase or a Kraken. There's no way for them to go to the SEC and register as a crypto exchange. Such a thing does not exist. So what's happened is a lot of exchanges have gone the route of becoming what's called a money services business under federal law, which usually means they have to have a money transmitter license in the States. And it looks like X is going down that route because they've got a money transmitter license from the state of Utah. This could be the start of pretty big things. Elon came back. Elon responded to this and said it might even be in this thread. He said California and New York take the longest for approval. I think that will surprise no one. I think anyone in crypto could have guessed that just based on the way that California and New York have treated crypto generally. And this is probably true of all money transmitter licenses of any kind for those states. They're just the most bureaucratic states, the most regulation, the hardest places to do business, period. So no surprise there. So does this mean that Elon is going to run with money transmitter licenses in a few different states and use that to become a money services business under the federal laws? Or is he going to have to go through and get a money transmitter license in many, many states? We don't know. He's obviously looked at least California and New York, and he has the license in Utah. But whichever direction this goes, whatever roundabout means, he he uses to get to his final destination, it looks like X becoming more than what it is today is definitely something that's happening. And this could be huge for crypto. So much of the social aspect of crypto is already happening on Twitter. If we could use Twitter to send crypto back and forth to each other, this would be highly impactful. Some of you would hate this. Some of you would love this, and I think a reasonable person could be on either side of that argument, but it would definitely be very highly impactful. A quick note on the USDC discussion that's going on in Cardano right now. So some people want USDC to come to Cardano. They even would be willing to give Circle a bunch of money to bring USDC to Cardano. Why do they want that? They think it'll increase liquidity. They think we need a stable coin in Cardano, and they want it here now, and they're like, why not go for the biggest, most well-known, stable coin that's not Tether, which is USDC. So, and it's very understandable. Certainly, USDC is trusted by a lot of people. I think a lot of us in crypto have used USDC and Tether in the past, and haven't run into any problems with USDC. There's another side to that argument, and I'm actually with the people on the other side of the argument. People like Jillian and Matthew Ploman of Mean. So we've got these initiatives that are homegrown kind of Cardano initiatives to create a stable coin for Cardano, right? And I'm always going to support the Cardano homegrown alternative to something. Maybe not always, but in this case, I'd rather have our own homegrown Cardano stablecoin than something that's, USDC is put out. We've talked about this before on the channel, but it's put out by Center, which is a collaboration between Circle and Coinbase. And I don't think it would hurt to have our own thing. Why? Because I think Cardano is probably always going to do it better than it's been done before. We'll always be able to figure out a way to improve things, to innovate, to make some progress, to move forward. And I think that could be the case here too, but maybe not. So what do I mean by that? So the thing about USDC, and I think most of you probably know that, is that Circle is able to freeze USDC. This is a regulatory compliance strategy, right? If some kind of bad actor has a bunch of USDC and they're trying to do bad things, then Circle can freeze that USDC. That is not a mechanic that is normal to the Cardano world. Cardano native tokens are not creatures of smart contracts like they are in the EVM world. Circle and Coinbase and USDC, they all kind of, maybe not Coinbase, but definitely USDC sort of comes from the EVM side of the world. And tokens are creatures of smart contracts. So you can code those smart contracts however you want, including to make, the tokens related to the smart contract something that can be freezed, because the tokens really belong to the smart contract. In Cardano, we have native tokens. They are native to the blockchain, just like ADA is. And those tokens are not frozen. You have to do a bunch of special stuff to have assets that are, to have Cardano tokens that are not solely in the possession of the person who owns them. If you're a Cardano native token holder, usually you have the whole bundle of sticks that make up ownership. With USDC, there's a stick missing. Circle holds that stick, and it means that one stick out of the bundle that makes up ownership, that one stick out of the bundle is the stick that allows Circle to be able to freeze your assets. And, this all sounds good. You're like, hey, if we're talking about terrorists or, narco traffickers or human traffickers or other assorted bad guys, we want the authorities to be able to go to Circle and be able to freeze those assets. However, there is a beauty in having full ownership over something. And until I'm persuaded otherwise, I am in favor of retaining that in Cardano. I would prefer that we have a stable coin that's a true native token, a Cardano native token that's native to the blockchain. I would prefer to have assets in my wallet that can't be frozen by some random company, some random group called Circle. And it's 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 becoming people are becoming impassioned over this topic because it does go to the root of the ethos of Cardano. We're trying to do things better. And the reason why I said maybe not at the start of this is because we don't know what's going to happen with regulation of crypto assets in the future. It could be we end up in a future where there's some kind of crazy legislation in North America where the only kinds of stable coins that can go forward are ones like this, where you don't have the full bundle of sticks that make up ownership, where the issuer can freeze your assets. It could be that these are the only kinds of stable coins, at some point in the future that could exist. But I'm saying, let's not jump the gun on that. Let's not invite that future to our doorstep. Let's let's retain this beautiful world where we can have Cardano native tokens that are true first class citizens of the blockchain, where you can own all of the sticks in the bundle of sticks that make up ownership. Let's stay in that world as long as possible. Let's let the regulators force us out of that world, or even better, not even the regulators. Let's let the lawmakers be the ones to force us out of that. Let's not voluntarily give up that beautiful thing that is absolute ownership, absolute digital ownership. This goes to the root of crypto. The whole deal with crypto was that it was confiscation resistant, censorship resistant. What Circle has done is create a stablecoin that is not censorship resistant, that is confiscatable. These are exactly the things that Satoshi was trying to get away from, exactly the things that excited everyone about Bitcoin. Let's not jump over to this world. I know everybody just wants to pump their bags. They think USDC will bring all this capital into Cardano and that'll make number go up. And maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong, but let's not give up this absolute ownership of these digital assets yet. That's why I'm in the same camp as Mian and a lot of the other Cardano native stablecoin enthusiasts who want that absolute ownership, who don't want this world where some random corporation somewhere out there can suddenly say, oh, yeah, those things you purchased, those things you own, actually, you don't own those. We deleted those. Finally, this is one of the most delightful things, other than the ETF approvals, that I've seen in crypto in a long time. Full credit to Stake with Pride for finding this. So, this is the kind of conversation we've seen quite often in the Ethereum world. They get this same Ethereum core dev and they start asking him questions, and he talks about how they're going to solve Ethereum's problems. So, this time, the great savior, the thing that's going to save Ethereum. They've got all these problems. They've got Lido and Rocket Pool because they don't have true liquid staking, which Cardano does have. So they've got these staking derivative instruments, and this creates this giant amount of concentration and custodial staking, or non-custodial, however you'd like to say it. But basically, you don't have custody of the assets you're staking. You have to put them into the custody of Lido because they're going to give you a liquid staking derivative instrument. They don't like to call it that, but it's basically what it is. This is a huge problem for Ethereum. They've also got other problems like finality and slashing, problems that aren't a problem in Cardano. We don't have slashing, and we have very predictable finality of our transactions for all the reasons we've talked about many, many times on this channel. So Ethereum's still got all these problems, but there's a savior. There's a new savior. There's a new narrative. It's one-shot signatures, which the developer, the core dev here, tells us is from a paper that nobody noticed from years back, but it's going to solve all the problems. Here's the delightful part. So, who was involved in this great technological innovation, this paper that no one noticed from years ago? Who's responsible for this? Well, the first hint is that Agalos Kiais is one of the authors. And of course, down here in giant capital letters, you see IOHK also involved in this paper. Yes, this is one of the many IOHK papers, but could they mention that at all? Even obliquely reference it, even hint that IOHK was involved? Not that I saw in that clip. That does not fit the narrative. A Cardano founding entity being responsible for something that apparently might be the answer to all of Ethereum's problems. That's not going to be part of the narrative, but all of us in Cardano, we know their future is our past. I hope you're looking forward to a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.